Hey SmartPak fans, I'm SmartPaker Dan. She's Dr. Lydia Gray, SmartPak staff veterinarian and medical director, and we are here to answer horse health questions asked and voted on by you. Now, if you're new to Ask the Vet, give you a little background on how this works. So you ask your horse health questions using hashtag AskTheVetVideo. Then we pick out the ones, well, Dr. Gray picks out the ones that she thinks will put up for voting. Then you guys get to vote for the top ones. The top 5 questions will then get answered in a video just like this. And not only does your question get answered by the amazing Dr. Lydia Gray, but you also win a SmartPak gift card. So that...
Which might be the better of the two.
Oh, come on. So make sure you definitely ask your questions, because who doesn't need a little extra money, right? But we also do have some exciting news for Ask the Vet.
We do?
We do. Did you not get an update?
Well, I don't know what you're going to say, so.
So next month, we are actually taking Ask the Vet on the road, and we are going to be filming in front of a live audience. So
terrifying.
Very terrifying. So we're not going to be filming live on like Facebook or anything like that,
No.
we still need some editing.
You never know what I'll say.
But we will be in front of a live audience, so this is going to be super exciting. So you guys are going to definitely check out that
They'll
episode.
be able to hear the audience maybe react.
I
hadn't thought about that.
I'm curious to see like how the questions are going to go. Are you going to be prepared, like put on the spot like that?
I don't know.
You'll be great. But you guys will definitely have to check out that episode to see where we end up.
It'll be fun.
It'll be a ton of fun.
A little different, yeah.
Nice to change things up a little bit. But let's jump into this episode, because we've got some great questions that we need to have answered.
Right.
So question number 1 was asked by Marky on Ask the Vet forum at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions. And Marky wants to know, when you get a new horse and are unable to continue feeding them the same diet, both green and hay, either because you don't have access to it or just don't know what they were being fed at all, how can you minimize the risk of a digestive upset when you start feeding them at home? And we actually did have a community comment also on YouTube from Sandy, and she said, yeah, I want to know more about the last one. And she also said, hashtag best channel in the world. Well, thank you very much, Sandy.
Okay. I totally get this question because I have a background in horse rescue, and I mean, we would impound horses and to start from completely scratch. So I get it. And for those who don't have that background, I'll share that the reason you're concerned about starting a horse from completely scratch is when you're transitioning a horse to a new diet, we're always told do it slowly over 7 to 10 to even 14 days, and both hay and grain and pasture. And that's because of the bacteria that live in the hindgut. They need time to adapt to the new feed stuff because they're the ones actually doing the work. So it's all about the little bugs, the little good bugs. And what we're trying to do is prevent a colic, loose stool, and other sort of digestive disturbances or disruptions or whatever. So I have some common sense tips. It's things like small meals frequently. That's always good for horse digestion. Change one thing at a time. So maybe just start with hay, just to forage and get that out of the way first. You got to make sure they're drinking well. So it could be adding some salt to the diet. I like to keep them moving, so don't just throw them in a stall, but make sure they have good turnout and exercise and that, but not to the point that you're not still training and conditioning and competing. You don't want to add any more stress.
Yes.
I would also count as stress, and now this will be shocking, you'll be shocked.
Shock me.
Okay. Have the veterinarian out to do a physical exam, make sure the horse is healthy, but try to wait on vaccinations and deworming and blood work and even dental care and foot care. Wait on that stressful stuff until you maybe through the food transition.
I am shocked that you said that.
Are you?
Especially deworming.
But does it make sense? That
Absolutely.
You want to cut down on the horse's stress.
Yes.
Okay. What else can you do? You can think, are there any supplements, specific supplement ingredients that might help the horse during this transitional period? And there are. And there's research around probiotics, prebiotics, yeast, and enzymes to show that they help the horse stabilize the hindgut, assist with these transitions in diet, what are other good words, stabilize the populations that live in the hindgut, adjust to feed changes, all those good things. As far as probiotics would be like the actual living bugs. So you might look on the label and see terms like lactobacillus. Bifidobacterium, Enterococcus. Do you have a favorite one?
I don't have a specific favorite one. It's so hard to choose.
I know, there's so many. Prebiotics would be things, those are the food for the good bugs, is the way that we shorten and say it. It's things like moss and phos and inulin and pectin. Enzymes help break down the larger chunks of nutrients into portions that the horse's gut can digest. And then yeast is fun. We include that as Saccharomyces cerevisiae, and our favorite brand is Diamond V yeast. And so you'll look at our products and see that say Smart Digest Ultra will have Diamond V yeast brand in it, as we think that has a lot of value in horses that are trying to maintain a healthy GI tract.
Absolutely. And I think that's such great advice. And I was just saying to Dr. Gray before this episode, we just got a new horse into my barn on Tuesday, so very familiar with having to do some of this. And since the forage, to your point, is like the main part of the horse's diet.
Correct.
And I know that if you change a horse's hay too quickly, they're almost like 10 times more likely to colic.
Yep.
So do that one first, get them transitioned nicely, and then slowly start to transition the rest of it as you kind of go through.
Yeah. So did you do anything else with this horse, or
so
not
it's
do,
day
or?
2. So
it just happened.
Just got here.
Oh, okay.
But so far so good.
Good.
You know, a little bit of turnout just to kind of keep them moving, because
keep them moving.
Get the digestion. No riding yet or anything like that, but. He's a super mellow guy so far.
Let him chill.
Yeah.
Good. All right.
But it also sounds like you are getting a new horse, but based on that question, which is very exciting. So definitely make sure you send us some photos of your new horse when they come, okay? And let us know if these tips help you out. So on to question number 2.
Okay.
So this was submitted by Equine Euphoria on Instagram at SmartPak. And they want to know, are horses similarly prone to depression like humans? If so, what are some symptoms and ways to treat it?
Well, this may have been the most fascinating question that we've ever gotten.
I loved it.
I actually never considered whether horses get depressed. And it's not a term that we learn about in veterinary medicine. It's more of a human thing, I thought, until I looked it up for this. And it turns out that there is a growing body of research around equine depression. But I want to back up a little bit because, so when I first read this, I thought, oh, sure, like a horse leaves the herd and his friend is sad. Well, that's more separation anxiety. And then maybe a horse dies and his buddy is there and knows it happened, but that's more sadness, grief, right? So then I thought, well, how is sadness different from depression?
Exactly.
So I had to look that up. And it turns out that, and this is a little blend of human and animal, but sadness is a temporary, normal, emotional experience that we all do, and it's about one thing. It's about something, like my horse friend died.
Sad over one instance.
Exactly,
that
an issue. And depression is an abnormal mental state where you're sad about everything, and it affects your thinking and your behavior and your perceptions, and it's just widespread, and you can't do anything about it. One of the core clinical features of depression, this is a word this is not a veterinary word. It's a human medical word, but now we're using it on horses because we're studying depression. It's called anhedonia.
I love when you say a good big word like that.
I know, and I'm going to read the definitions just to make sure I get it right, because now I'm treading a little bit into the human medical field. But it's the reduced or lack of the ability to experience pleasure in normally pleasurable activities. So like for horses, we maybe taking a treat, eating a treat. They don't care anymore. Another way to define it is you've lost interest in activities that you used to enjoy. Maybe pasture was like your thing, and the gate would open and you were right there, and you're like,
I was just kind of standing there like.
Yeah. So there's some really interesting research that just happened in France that they validated that this person's question, that horses do experience something akin to depression in humans. And first they defined a term, withdrawn horses.
Okay.
So instead of saying a depressed horse, they're calling it withdrawn is their terminology. And it could be a translation thing, I don't know. But they described them as having long bouts of immobility an unusual posture with backward-facing ears, a flattened neck, and the head fixed. Wide open eyes with unusually long interval and blinking, so like a fixed stare.
So it's just like glassed over almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You've got it. And then standing in the stall with the head towards the wall, turned away. And so what they're doing is they have tuned out from their surroundings. They've checked out or switched off. And they think, the theory is, it's in response to chronic or long-term physical or mental stress. Yeah, so their study was...
So it's almost like a survival
coping,
mechanism.
a coping, yeah. So the study was, they measured how the control group of normal horses and the withdrawn horses reacted to 5 sounds. The 5 sounds were a baboon call.
Okay.
They'd never heard, right? These are novel
Yeah.
noises. A goose call, a whale call, an unfamiliar horse, so a horse whinnying they never heard before, and then a piano.
If my horse heard a baboon call, he would be on the other side of the arena.
Well, right, that's the normal horse.
Yeah.
So the normal, 90% of the normal horses, they videotaped them, had a reaction to these calls. And the interesting thing was, over time, they did this each day, they habituated.
Okay.
They got used to it.
So being exposed to it more frequently, they now weren't so concerned about
And
the
that was
baboon.
normal. The withdrawn horses, so the abnormal ones, half of them had no response to the noise.
Wow. Nothing at all?
Just didn't care.
Wow.
Just didn't care. They were experiencing anhedonia. So, and over time, their reaction didn't change.
Really?
Didn't care, didn't care, didn't care. Every day they experiment.
Oh, that's so sad, though.
I know. Well, and so what they're saying is, if you notice a horse that is like this, you need to look into it, you and your vet, because
Okay.
there's a problem. Pain and discomfort is probably the most common reason for horses to check out or withdraw. And so you need to evaluate, is there a soundness issue? Is there a pain in some other part of the body?
Like they're just so uncomfortable that...
Their way of coping
Yeah.
is to just check out so they don't feel it. The other thing is evaluate their living conditions. So their social life, their stabling, their turnout, those kind of things. Because especially if other horses in that same barn are experiencing either the withdrawnness or aggression or stereotypical behaviors like cribbing or weaving or stall walking or those, that's a sign that the horse is experiencing stress. So it needs to be looked into.
So then we have to look at what's our entire management program.
Exactly.
And are there things we could change?
Exactly.
Okay.
So if there's one horse doing it, it's probably something that just that horse is experiencing, either pain, discomfort, or some emotional problem. Or if it's a lot of horses, then it's management.
Are there
most
like
likely.
simple things you could possibly do, like putting them in a stall that's maybe so they can see other horses or see if they can have a turnout buddy?
I think you have to, I think observation is key.
Okay.
Is and documenting that horse's experience. So what is it? Is it that the stall, you know how some stalls are solid walls and don't have any way to see? Maybe he can't see another horse. Like maybe the tack stall is right across from him, so his front is not even a horse and his sides are solid. It could be anything, but so your powers of observation are your front here.
And let's be careful though, because let's observe, but don't necessarily go up to your horse with a baboon noise right off the bat.
No, don't recreate the study, but just know what's normal for your horse, and if they begin to behave differently, then pay attention.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's all we're saying.
That's so interesting though. It's nice to see that there's a lot of studies going on about that, and some
Yeah.
things I think that we just take as normal behavior for that horse could actually be a deeper issue.
And that it's important that somebody knows that horse how he acts normally and speaks up when he doesn't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, on to question number 3, and this was submitted by Tennessee Chestnut on Instagram, and
I always wanted a great horse name, like Chestnut.
You want to the horse name?
A great horse name. That's a.
It makes me think of a country song, though. Tennessee Chestnut.
That could be.
I like it.
Yeah.
I'm into
All
it.
right.
So, how can I keep my horse healthy without being heavy on supplements? Ooh, good question for you.
So when you read that, what did you think that was asking? Because I'm not quite sure which way to go here. I've got a couple
Great
of
question.
choices.
So I was wondering, because being on our customer care team, we have a lot of people who call in who are nervous that they're going to do too much and
Over
and
supplement,
have
okay.
a lot of overlap of ingredients. And then we have some people who go the other end of the spectrum, and if the horse has a hoof, they want a hoof supplement. If the horse has skin and coat, they get skin. Basically, any part the horse has, they want a supplement for it.
Okay.
So I was thinking that this person, based on the question, was they're just looking to have like maintenance level support for their horse. Is kind of how I understood it.
Okay, all right.
How did you interpret it?
Well, I interpret it as kind of the first part you said, that they felt like if they're using SmartPaks, that their strip was getting too long.
What happens?
And maybe I'm over supplementing, and I want to do the right thing by my horse, but I don't want to overdo it either. How do we strike the right balance?
Exactly.
Okay, that's what I'm answering. So I don't know. So my first thought is, and I'm always let's back up to get on the same page. And I thought, well, when it comes to supplements, you only give what your horse needs. So you don't give what's trending on social media, and you don't give what your friend gives her horse, because their horses are all different, and they're unique, and they're individuals. And you don't give what's on sale, the clearance, although it's fun. So how then do you know what your horse needs? And I think this is a theme for this segment is knowing normal.
Okay.
You always have to know your horse. And so now we're talking about not just the vitals and the behavior, but does your horse tend to be an easy keeper or a hard keeper? Does he have, like my horse has very good hooves, and that sort of thing. So know what's normal for your horse, but also have that good relationship with your vet, because your vet is going to give exams and also good wellness care. And so you guys are a team of what's normal for your horse and how to keep him that way. Then you start with nutrition.
Okay.
You don't start supplementing until the nutrition is there.
Absolutely.
And that's forage first, and then we have this little saying MVP, and it stands for minerals, vitamins, and protein. You got to meet the horse's diet that way. That at least the minimums. Hopefully optimize it, and then calories if needed. Then I get into.
And that's all kind of based on the workload of your horse and
age,
the body condition, age, all of that.
Right.
Okay.
Amount of exercise. Yeah, you said workload.
Workload, yeah.
Okay. And so then, now we think about, well, horses aren't getting a lot of salt in their food, right? So I always
They're
give
doing way better
horses
than
salt.
we are.
I give salt, but to some people, that's a supplement, and for some it's not.
That is where it does get a little
Right?
tricky. Yep.
Because supplement
It's a seasoning.
is a noun, it's a verb, it's an adjective. Maybe I don't think it's an adverb, but it's for some people. Hay, oats, and water. Period. Well, salt is okay. Well, but then you're supplementing.
Yep.
So, and then what about omega-3s? That's also supplementing if you're throwing those babies in there. After that's done, anyway, and of course management. So, nice, healthy, clean, good-smelling stall, and a good turnout, and an appropriate exercise program, and all that. But now you begin to look, like what you were saying earlier, at the different systems of your horse. The hooves I mentioned, digestive tract. You have a new horse in your barn.
Yep.
Joints maybe, and you say, where does my individual, unique, one-of-a-kind horse need support? So I don't give my horse any sort of hoof supplement because he has great feet.
No, and so to your point, so make sure their regular diet is balanced.
Complete and balanced, yeah,
Forage,
well-rounded.
grain when added calories
Yep.
if needed. And then from there, once we kind of have that balanced out, then we start to see what areas might be missing or lacking.
So maybe you're feeding great and your horse is not keeping weight on. And of course, the first thing you do is you have a relationship with your vet, so you get the vet out, and it's simply a lack of groceries, or he just isn't utilizing the nutrition that you're giving him, and you're giving him a ton of payday, and it's just going right through. So maybe a digestive support supplement is appropriate for that horse.
Okay.
That's how you think about supplements.
I love that. So balance that all out, see if there's any areas that are missing once that's all in place.
Yeah.
Have a conversation with your vet, and then fill in the gaps as needed with some
I
supplements.
think that makes a lot of good sense.
Easy enough. Let us know if you have any more questions about it. Of course, you can always call our customer care team, though, because Dr. Gray does an amazing job with all our trainings and keeping us up to date on anything. So if you do have any questions about supplements, just give us a call. So on to question number 4. This was submitted by Georgia on YouTube. So Georgia wants to know, how do you know if a horse is in pain or any discomfort?
This is related to the other one. I thought it was interesting that both questions got voted high up.
Yes.
It must be a point of concern with people. And again, this was not an area that I had done a lot of previous work in, so quite a bit of research when I saw this floating up there, you know. But again, I appreciate that people are making me do this because I'm learning a ton, and so now I get to share it with people. But I think I've said it like 40 times today, no normal.
Okay.
If you know what your horse acts and eats and interacts like normally when he is different, then you know something's up. And it could be pain or discomfort. That's the first sign. They're not acting right.
Yeah.
I read something online by Dr. Nancy Deal, who's just a practitioner, but I thought really, really wise, and a horse owner. And she said, create a catalog of your horse, of a horse's normal set of behaviors, inside the stall, outside the stall, when you're working him. There's actually a name for such a thing.
What is it?
It's called an ethogram.
Oh.
It's a sign.
What is that?
Yeah, well, so it's a chart or table of all the different kinds of behavior, actions, activity observed in a particular animal species. So there's ethograms by species. And I found the U.S. Department of Interior has an ethogram of free-ranging feral horses that is amazing.
Really?
It talks about...
That must be really fascinating.
It is. It stayed up way too late last night. It talks about locomotion, how they move and why. It talks about feeding behavior, play, investigative behavior, maintenance behavior, grooming.
Wow.
It's
detailed.
It just puts everything that horses do in these different categories. And then you look and you say, well, these all things are normal, so if I see anything else, cribbing is not in the ethogram. That's an abnormal behavior, an action or activity.
So there might be something going on with the horse.
Yeah, so you're looking for those. So make an ethogram for your horse.
I love that.
I know, isn't that fun? So now, after that, like a horse-wide ethogram, they've moved on to facial ethograms. I know. There's science going on out there we have no idea. It's really interesting.
This is so fascinating. So what's the facial one?
Okay, so they've named it the horse grimace scale.
Horse grimace scale.
Do you know what I mean? Grimace.
Yeah, like
okay.
facial. Like,
yeah. So there's a scale that, and I think maybe we'll show it. I found one from Colorado State University, the vet school out there, and it has pictures of horses and the face they make when they are in pain.
So,
and this has been validated and studied and confirmed. And
is there like one specific type of face a horse makes when in pain, or is there like a range of?
Like there's muscle tension, mouth open, the eyes do something. It's on a scale. So when there's a little pain, they have a little bit. When there's more pain, there's more.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is something that would be dangerous for me because I'm already someone prone to like, do they look a little off today or not? Like, and I will overthink it to a degree. So now I'm going to be like looking at his eyes.
It's like a body condition scoring scale.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, one step more. You better like put your seatbelt on.
I'm ready. Bring it on.
So the next step is Dr. Sue Dyson, who's one of my favorite people. She's an investigator, a veterinarian from the UK. Her and her team developed a facial ethogram specifically to riding.
To riding?
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
So like while you're on, there's the faces your horse will make to see whether they're in pain or not.
That's it.
That is so cool.
And so she has developed this instrument that is useful in determining if a horse is lame or sound based on the facial expressions it makes while being worked.
And sometimes we were talking about this, they specifically also mentioned pain, so it's not even just necessarily lameness or something of that nature. So the horse could be having like back pain and still kind of look...
It doesn't localize the pain, but it just says the horse is experiencing discomfort from somewhere. So now your job, the vet's job, is to
figure that out.
Yeah.
So it might not be like a limping step while someone's riding.
Yeah, it could be back pain. Back pain is a great example because back pain is actually something else that she studies.
Oh, okay.
She's one of the world's...
Glad I tied that in for you.
I know. She's one of the world's premier saddle fitters.
Oh.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And how the fit of the saddle has to do with the way the horse goes and its comfort or not. But the facial markers showing the greatest significant difference between lame and sound horses were ears back, tipping the head, the eyes partially or fully closed, tension around the eye, squinting, intense stare, an open mouth with exposed teeth, and then severely above the bit.
Okay, yeah.
So she had a variety of people assess horses, videos and live horses and pictures even of different expressions, and they were really on target. And then to show how on target they were, she took the same horses that were lame, did a nerve block to take away the lameness, and then the facial expression went away, and the reviewers, the test reviewers, noticed it, and then they had checked them on this box before, and then after the nerve block, they said, nope, they're fine now.
This is so fascinating. It's probably one of the most interesting studies
Isn't it?
I've heard.
Yeah.
I am very curious to see how your own ethograms, though. I'm sure a lot of people are going to try them at home. And
Yeah.
definitely keep us posted with how that goes, and if you guys have any tips of how to keep track of all that. Thanks for sharing that. So on to question number 5.
All right.
This was also submitted on Instagram. This was by Alana Seeger, and she wants to know what causes swayback and how do you prevent it?
Well, there's no answer to either of those questions, so we're done. No,
That's the end of the episode.
so swayback would be the colloquial term, and the term that the veterinarian would use is lordosis. And lordosis means an inward curve of the spine or an arch, versus kyphosis is an outward curve or a hunch, and then scoliosis is a sideways or lateral curve.
Yes.
So they have names. It's hard to tell what she's thinking of. There's early onset lordosis, like in a young horse, and then there's the old age associated or late term.
Which most people feel is common.
Yeah, and
as
the horse ages, the soft tissues that hold the spine rigid begins to sink. Those tissues become lax or loose, and the muscles in the belly and the back sort of become less strong, and the whole thing sort of sags over time.
Okay, so the muscles in the abdomen is not strong enough to also keep the back up, plus the back muscles are...
Ligaments and the tendons, they're sort of loosening and softening and they're not
So
as structurally sound. Yeah, so now, but it's different in the young horse. There's a theory that the young horse, there's a deformity in the vertebrae themselves. Because if you're 18 months or 2 years old and you have not a gentle sag like an older horse, but a pretty extreme, that looks different, and you would suspect the bony shapes to be different, and then radiographically it's been shown they are.
So there's something more severe going on.
Yes, but interestingly enough, horses are one of the only species that can have a significant lordosis and not be affected. Like, they can still have a normal, long, healthy, productive life.
But could you ride them?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah. It does not seem to affect their performance, their way of going. You can still be a broodmare. I mean, yeah.
Because, I mean, we've all seen that horse who looks a little dipped in the back, creates a nice little seat for you to sit in. But I always thought, like, there might be some discomfort that goes along with that. But
it doesn't appear to be just talking about the back issue. Now, when you put a saddle on, then you could create an issue, because if you've got a back that dips, now you've got the potential to create bridging, where the front of the saddle and the back of the saddle touch, but the middle doesn't.
Okay, so now you're like hitting weird pressure points.
Yeah, so now you have to be really, really careful that your saddle fits if you're going to continue to ride a horse that ages into it, or a horse that just has it from the get-go.
Well, there are a lot of saddle pads now that are designed to kind of help with some of that bridging for horses who do have some swayback to kind of help that out a little bit.
Yeah, and I would probably engage in services of a saddle fitter to help to make sure. A couple more things I wanted to say was that the reason this is not studied a lot, and so causes and prevention and correcting, is because only about 1% of the general horse population has this, and it's just not enough for the money to be there to research it. About 7%, though, of American saddlebreds have this. And I'm sure you were thinking of that. I mean, it can happen to any horse, but saddlebreds, they are now confidently saying there is a heritable or genetic component to it. The specific gene has not been identified, but they're really close. They do know that the gene is recessive, not dominant, which means you have to have 2 copies of it to show it. So the sire and the dam must both have a copy.
Got it.
If you remember your Mendelian
I remember
genetics.
my little Punnett square. I knew it'd come in handy one day.
So it's seen more often in saddlebreds, and when it comes to causes, for saddlebreds at least, there is a genetic component preventing it, other than not breeding 2 horses that have it. Yeah, that would not. That's the only way you can prevent it. And then once it begins, I mean, there's not really anything you can do about it.
I was going to say there's not like any sort of like exercises you could do to help support the abs and make sure the horse is like engaging. But
maybe for the old age onset version of it, you could encourage them to have that lift in the back and the roundness, and do exercise that support the abdominal muscles. But I think you're just prolonging it or extending their normal lifespan, or slowing the progression down.
It's not going to cure it. You're
just slowing things down, slowing the inevitable down. So
that's super helpful. Hopefully it was helpful for your question.
Yeah.
But that is it for this episode.
Okay.
That's it for this episode of Ask the Vet. Thank you guys so much for submitting your questions. Make sure you keep asking your questions, though, for our June episode.
June. Notice you said June.
So very far away. That's because next month we'll be doing our live episodes. So we're going to be getting questions for that one. So definitely have plenty of time to think about some questions for that one. So make sure you ask your questions on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, our blog, and our forum at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions.
Wowie.
Lots of places to ask them for sure. Just make sure to use the hashtag AskTheVetVideo. And don't forget to check our playlist and the Horse Health Library on smartpak.com to make sure to see if your question hasn't already been answered.
Yeah. I won't pick it if we've already answered it.
And if you've asked a question before, though, and it hasn't been voted, make sure to keep asking, though, because
That's right.
I've seen some really good ones that I'm like, make it to the top.
I know. So, yeah, if it has not been one of the top 5, resubmit.
Yes, absolutely. But if your question was answered in this video or in a previous one, make sure to reach out to our customer care team at customercare@smartpak.com so you can claim your SmartPak gift card.
Right.
So until next time, make sure to subscribe and have a great ride.